This is the Take Your Turn 2022 tournament hosted by Groove of War. Groove of War hosts Wargroove commentary and analysis, linked to their channel in the description. Take Your Turn is composed of 3 events: Wargroove, Chess, and Go. And so obviously on this channel we're looking primarily at Go. My name is Arn Fosta. This commentary is aimed at newer players in the double-digit Q ranks. If you do spot any mistakes or things we miss, please leave them in the comments. Today, commentating with me is Just Your Eventual Ruler. Hey, Ruler.
Hello, my name's Ruler. I'm gonna be co-commentator. And honestly, I'm really excited for this game just because I think it's a very well played game for the level that we are reviewing, even if it, you know, includes me.
I was gonna say it's exciting because I think because we are going to be looking at a game between you and Xmo in round one, and so we get a chance to also sort of dig into your head and really understand what you were thinking from your perspective, what else you were considering, and what you feel like worked well and didn't work well. So I think it's a really great opportunity to get a chance to get that first person perspective, which can be can be kind of difficult sometimes, especially as we're all when we start learning, getting a sense of what were you looking at, where was your focus, can be so helpful. So today we are going to look at round one, game two, between Xmo playing black and Just Your Eventual Ruler playing white. Ready, Ruler?
Uh, yes.
Perfect. So I'm going to go a couple moves in because I think it doesn't take us long before there's something to talk about, especially in comparison to the first game. So that first game started out where, within the first 20 moves, you had an enormous influence advantage. And this game is starting out very differently. Did that did that catch you off guard? Was that expected?
Um, as the person who taught him, it was entirely expected. I wasn't expecting how well he would respond. It did catch me a little bit. Like this we played the first game literally the day before this one, right?
Right.
So just to see the improvement like that quickly is a little bit jarring.
Can you talk a little bit? I think again, since we have you as the actual player, as newbie 101 here, in this opening stage of the game, obviously it's one of the toughest things for players of all levels to get a handle on. So as you were starting out, what was your thought process? What was your approach in these first opening moves?
My name is Takamiya, and I play Cosmic Go.
Do you want to?
That's
Yeah, I was gonna say for
for the uninoculated. Takamiya is known for building big areas for points, um, and they're known for taking the outside and just making a big like center, just to, and they have a really good ability to count, so they don't. They're able to make just enough points to win a lot of the time. So because of that, they're just it's, they build big magnificent walls.
right. Um,
Um,
One thing I'd love for you to follow up on it is we've looked at a couple other games, and there are several games in round one where the players also seem to go for this heavy influence based play, looking towards the center, or even almost exclusively playing in the center, trying to build play Moyo and build a big framework that they can turn into points. But they sort of start there. And can you talk a little bit about you're also looking at a going big, but you're starting your game from the corners. You're not jumping into the center from the get go. Why start in the corners before you sort of move into the center?
okay, there's a few reasons. At least if you try and understand traditional like Go opening theory, right? Um, the first one is about efficiency. When you're building big points, especially as white, you need to be really worried about how efficient your stones are being. And playing in the center, that can technically be efficient, but only if you're building like a huge square, right? Um, you can think of building territory on the corner versus the side versus the center as how many sides do I need to build? And in the center, you have to build all four sides. So if you start in the center, you're going to be not as efficient as if you started in the corner, right? You only have two sides in the corner that you need to really worry about in order to secure it, and the sides only have three. So
Right.
starting in the center is just inherently less efficient whenever you're trying to go for it.
Perfect.
And the next one is influence over like having a base, like the strength influence versus strength, I guess. Not really strength, but how secure the stones are where they're at. Cornerstones are a lot more secure than side stones, which are more secure than center stones. And this is because, as we mentioned again, there's less sides you have to worry about. So it's easier to plant yourself in the corner and say, hey, I have this and I can work away from this. Whereas if you place in the center, that stone can get chased around later once your opponent has like a corner or two. So usually you wait, you don't want to play in the center too early because you don't have enough influence projecting over there. The center move is like all the power, but in no particular direction, at least at the time you play it usually. Unless you've like fully developed already, and then the center point is like, okay, this is all the influence in a very relevant area that we're going to be fighting over.
Right. Awesome. I
It's
think.
just it's just that when you play the center, there's usually more important things to worry about settling on your side before you should play that. It's just you can also think of it as for the third reason, that's a stone that you could be using to guarantee points on the side, which is more efficient, or on the corner. Uh, you gotta be careful whenever you play away from someplace. Like tanuking is very scary at our level because we don't know what's actually good or not sometimes.
It's absolutely, it is very difficult to to sometimes get a clear read, especially is in when there's so many things to keep track of, and counting can be difficult to keep track of your head, along with trying to read all those things that at our level can be challenging to sort of manage. So no, absolutely. And I think you make a great point, just that for those who are looking to play a similar style to you, and particularly looking back on some of the games we've seen, or will see as they go up, that there are playing and trying to create a large framework, playing Cosmic Go doesn't mean that you only have to play in the center. There's a you can not only shift your philosophy a little bit to still get where you want to, but there are some real advantages and strengths to adapting when you play and where. So I think that it's going to be great to see the ways in which this game evolves here.
Remember, folks, it's not Cosmic Go, it's Go the natural way.
Go the natural way. And so can we start by talking about move 14 here at M3 that you do? So you've got these if we just to make it sort of clear, battle lines have kind of been drawn here between the two sides, and now you jump in. What was your feeling, and why M3? Why the approach now?
So the feeling was, oops, I misclicked. I wanted so right here okay, and I think the last video recorded, which is one of the Goose Game one.
Yes.
I screwed up the lines, mentioning the lines, and I basically did that here. I played the third line when I wanted to play the fourth line. The third line's really bad here. It's too low, and the third line. You have no area to make a base. In fact, it's probably impossible to make a base here if you really tried. Uh,
So
it, it yeah.
you were looking to play at M4. You're looking to play a line higher,
Yes.
but
It's much easier to jump out from the fourth line. And also, if they decide to like go under me, that doesn't matter. I can just try and take the outside, and I'll my like invasion stone, it will just turn into a wall. So like if I play one high and they like try to undercut me, I can just like try and peep them a bunch to the left of where my stone is, right? Say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, do you want to connect? And if they connect, well, I'll ask again, do you want to connect? And if
Mm.
they don't, I have a small wall that I can use maybe in a fight, maybe to project some stones off of. It is deep, but it's still close enough to our both of our range of influence that it's contestable.
Mm. And you feel like,
And
mhm, go ahead.
and if they try to attack it, I can just jump out, and it's much easier than what I had to do in the game.
Right. So there are two other questions I wanted to ask. The first of which is is there a particular reason? So I think again, as newer players, I think it can be so difficult. You get used to setting up the corner maybe, but then you're looking, where do I've kind of got some stones set up here, and now I don't know where to go. So were you considering any other options except besides jumping in at M4 and starting to get a bit aggressive? Were there any other moves that you were looking at?
Okay, so you have to consider a few things here. The first thing is that we're pretty equal here, like just in general. We both have pretty solid development over where we're going to go. They're a little more balanced, maybe a little more reserved than I am. I have a lot of fourth line stones, so if they don't really attack me, I'm going to be more stone efficient there, right? Um, the main thing is that I'm white, so I want to try and reduce their potential because they have a lot of potential and they went first, right? So I'm saying whenever they play the star point here, I'm saying, okay, that's a little bit too much you're asking for. You're playing a little too loose here. You're trying to be a little more greedy than you're actually entitled to. So you have two things you can do here. You can either take the center in a big way faster than them, or you can invade, like I did, or at least threaten an invasion of some sort.
Right. And
And that's just because you're playing white, so you're a bit too slow here to play something like G16, H16. Um, you're just gonna let black kind of roll over you. One line lower, yeah. You're just gonna let black kind of roll over you if you do this, because they've secured two corners, right? Your corners can still be invaded, um, and even though you have a lot of influence, they're the one with Sente after you develop again, and you still have a major weakness at D13 that they can try and exploit somehow. So because of that, it makes more sense to go on the aggressive first, than to try and develop more.
cool. And you were saying, just to sort of to cap that off, you were saying that uh, M3 was a misclick, but M4 was the intended play, and the idea was that could begin to poke at the structure they were trying to build, but that by being on that fourth line, you had enough flexibility that you were close enough that you felt like you could still pull back if you needed to. You weren't in any immediate danger, and you could relatively freely begin to try to deconstruct what Xmo was going for.
Yeah, and another thing to try and consider is that it's really hard to like do anything about this stone. Your stones are kind of far apart from this stone, so you're gonna have to invest a stone or two, which is more than enough time for me to either make something big in the center or make an area to where my stone can run out to, or threaten to run out to, which can pose a lot of problems for black if they're trying to, build something big. Because I just have the stone on the inside, and eventually, if they have enough weaknesses in their wall, I can throw a bunch of like peeps. I can try and do a bunch of cuts to try and fight at them. Maybe try and push for an invasion somewhere, and then threaten to pull this stone back out if they don't, if they try to respond to the invasion. There's a lot of options you can do with this compared to if it was one line down. It's just a little farther from the center, a little farther from your own stones, and it's just a little bit too deep. And you're not going to be able to make life with it because the surrounding stones are a lot more severe.
Right. So if we look at it, the way in which Xmo responded, trying to clamp down here, and you jumped out. At this point, your current thought obviously is to, since you are deeper than you would like to be, you're trying to get out. Do you, and presumably try to put some pressure on these stones? Once you misclicked, what was your, how did that shift, did that shift your approach or your strategy here?
So
Would more than
basically,
three.
oh yeah. So we can go back to the shoulder hit. So there's a very important thing right here. What they're really doing here is that they're doing like three or four things with this move. They're asking a bunch of questions. You can. This is kind of like a bit of a kick. Like, do you really want to keep this stone? Like, do you really think the stone's worth it? So if the stone was maybe a little bit higher, this wouldn't be such a good option because you're just directly attaching, and fight would start out, which it's unclear who wins this, but it would be a big fight. Um, Whereas right here, it's indirect, so if I try to like extend, it's really rough for me to try and get out. And jumping is also really rough because they can threaten to cut off, right? And two space jump seems a little bit too loose and too close to Black's territory. Like, it is a possibility, but Black can just develop the left side free like that, right? Um, so at this point, I'm like, I'm just gonna sacrifice the stone, and play Knight's move. It's really disjointed from the first stone, and it is pretty fast. The main thing to note is that with a Knight's move, you're not directly threading to connect. So even though it looks like I'm trying to keep them relatively close together, I'm really not happy with this. So I'm just saying, hey, where do you want to let me run out? Um, to what is it? J5, right above the Blackstone. Like, are you willing to let me do that real quick?
Hmm. Oh, you mean like, oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
J5.
J5.
There we go.
Yeah. You want me to run over you real quick? That'd be worth sacrificing the stone over. I'd get a huge wall, and they would have to invade. Um, or do you just want me to run out to the other group potentially and build a wall there and have a bunch of reduction threats on the other side? Like,
So so since you are sort of with this L5 play on move 16, since you are sort of posing these options to Xmo, what did you did you have a read on what you how you expected Xmo to answer you?
I expected to prevent, like, it doesn't really make sense for them to block the right side.
Hmm.
It feels like your left side's a little bit too under pressure, so that two space base would probably jump out.
Yeah.
So that was what I predicted, and I think that's what happened.
Hmm.
Yeah, prevent me from rolling right over.
So at this stage, where the L5 stone, the previous knight's move, what are you still looking to utilize it? In what way are you trying to utilize it now, given that we've got that pressure on both sides?
Right now it more so just threatens to split up the groups, which would be a pretty huge. Like, if I'm able to connect all of my stones together eventually, and I'm successfully able to fend off whatever they throw at me. I I potentially have a much more stone efficient structure because if you can split your opponent in half, right, with just one line of stones, they have to use double the stones to cover up with their walls. So because of that, it's extremely stone efficient if you can get it. So your opponent is eventually going to have to deal with it somehow. Now, do note that this is an extremely weak group. It's already kind of very pressured right now, and It's very disjointed. There's a bunch of knights move. I'm trying to be fast, trying to get closer to an area of comfort to where my stones can be useful while still trying to pose threats to other areas,
Right.
which at this point I'm like I could be considering if I can just get a wall where like above that two space base group, I could potentially just sacrifice the invasion stones, right? And then build a huge area and just hope that I have enough points.
So I think another thing that's really common, especially is a situation like this develops, is that we often get very hyper focused into the local battle. And I think one of the great things, Ruler, that you're talking about is the ways in which you're trying to combine whatever is happening locally with the larger state of the board so that it's working in conjunction here. Sort of alongside that, with L5, and again that's that knight's move, is your mind still focused on keeping these out? Are you starting to look elsewhere? Do you feel like you need to develop this immediately, or are you potentially thinking you should hold and try to play Sente, well, Tanuki, and play Sente, keep Sente, play elsewhere to try to come back to it later? Where, how important is it for you that you can get out right now?
Getting out right now would be very nice, but it's unrealistic.
Hmm.
Like the black can just attach to the M3 stone, right? And then I can't rescue my group. It's like that stone is pretty dead
Right.
unless black just doesn't respond. So it's not really worth saving right now. The other stone, a little more worth saving because it's a little deeper. I can definitely use it. It could be useful Aji later on if I have if I need to invade at some point. But it's tough because I have two major areas that black has a lot of potential in too. Not only that, I still have weaknesses in my the behind me. I still have the weakness in between my top left corner and the left side. That's a big weakness. Similar issue near the top, and the corner is still invasible.
Right.
So I have a lot of issues, and it's really about determining which is the best. And sometimes you just gotta hope your opponent lets you get away with building a wall where you probably shouldn't have,
Right.
and then using that to really win the game. But it's difficult, and the computer agrees about 60 to 65 ish to 35 ish right now.
In
It's or
favor of
in,
in favor of Xmo.
yeah, in favor of Xmo. At least on the next move.
So why so with K7? So again, a follow up knight's move. So did you decide that it was, like you said, the M3 stone down here isn't that wasn't it wasn't your goal to save it, but that L5 stone above it did feel like it had potential. So did you feel like you needed to capitalize on that sooner rather than later, and that this local group here, needed to be, you wanted to keep putting on pressure?
So the main thing is that I'm worried about trying to get a big point in the center. At least that's my game plan. There's still a lot of potential for me, and I'm hoping I can just be more stone efficient, which admittedly is pretty hard at this point. Also, there's a bunch of possibility for fights around here. So having an extra stone somewhere near the center could be pretty useful. It also threatens to cap off the two spaces potential, and that's kind of a very good spot for me to build a wall because it forms a big square in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they respond, and at this point, I realized, this is not really. I don't have a good way to stop this from this angle, so I should probably threaten somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Very natural response, and my threat is that I'm going to build up, but not quite up enough to where black can invade or like really push into me too hard. I admit that black has too much potential, too much momentum near the bottom to really stop it. So I'm just going to take a natural developing move to prevent weaknesses and try and stop some invasions.
Can I ask about, so with the H7 play, did you expect Xmo to kind of back off there? I'm curious about if you'd read the J7, just a 1 point jump
I
to
was
put
ex-
stronger pressure
yeah,
on.
I was expecting the 1 point jump. I wasn't expecting the knight's move.
Okay.
Um, there's still potential for me to fight over that. Like
Hmm.
that can potentially become weaker later. So it's really I don't know how immediate it is to really capitalize on attaching to the waist of that.
Right. It certainly it certainly feels like it um, takes a little bit of pressure off of you. So I guess I was wondering when with Xmo's H7 play to keep themselves moving towards the center, keep themselves loose, but not not be quite as aggressive. If that was also part of a trigger for the move to solidify the top center, or if you were looking to solidify the top center regardless.
I'd probably solidify the top center anyways,
Hmm.
but if they'd attach, I'd probably just Hane. So if they instead of them taking the knight's move away, if they attached, it seems pretty natural to Hane here. They probably extend. I think to the left is better
Mm.
shape, because then you can make a table shape, right?
Right.
Um, I could solidify the top, and crosscut also seems pretty natural. Just say, hey, these are gone, and then you have a big fight,
Mm.
which is kind of what I want at this point,
Okay.
because black is pretty clearly starting to get ahead, and I need to do something about it.
Hmm. And so instead, it's a knight's move. You go ahead, you play at a16, and now you said, I mean, you're threatening to build or to start to solidify the top center and begin to form the the centerpiece there.
Yeah, I'm really threatening H10 here too. That would really stop them in their tracks, if you could get there. Um, that because if they try to start building along that, you're just building points in the center, and it's gonna be really hard to invade later on.
Right. What do they? And they actually just go. Xmo goes straight in.
Yeah, straight in. And then this is two cues for getting how to do Joseki. So,
Yeah, I was.
so
Go ahead.
that's a peculiar move. You don't want to. That's a non-issue right there. In fact, I made a mistake where I left a cutting point where I shouldn't have. It would have been better to cut me right there. And I'm like, oh, this is fine. This is Joseki. No, you
Yeah.
need to have three
Cut.
stones in a group.
Yeah, cut lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to be slightly stronger for this. Otherwise, because I just lose the. I think I just lose the race.
Right. And as you were saying on Xmo's side, the B16 is unnecessarily defensive, and there's there's the cut at the very least could have turned, and because Xmo ends up playing defensive, it gives you an opportunity to really try to lock this group down.
Or even kill it if he doesn't respond, right?
Right.
That move was unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
C9.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought that move
C19.
was
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe it helped with eye space, but I don't know. That feels like two small points for an area that's way bigger. But
Right.
I have after that weird corner exchange invasion, I am not ahead, but I'm getting closer to equalizing here because I now I have a huge wall that I can just throw stones off of, right?
Right.
So it's much easier now to do this move,
Right.
which
H10, which you just talked about, looking to try to get yourself into the center in a big way, and you've now got, I think like you mentioned, now you've got a strong wall to work off of in the back left or top left corner that you can utilize. You've got the presence of the D10, the H16 that give you a lot of staying power, and now there is this nice connection or influence between your H10 and that K7 stone that it suddenly got a little bit more support than it does. But I think this move is interesting because it puts you into the center in a big way and takes a game that was sort of on the sides, with the center being very undetermined to really put in the center, it seems like in much more, in your court, and asking black, how are you going to stop white from continuing continuing to push forward into the center and just utilize the outside framework. Granted, there's still a lot of space here, but try to use that outside framework to keep taking away the center. So tell me, I mean, I guess I've talked about it a little bit, but tell me, was that H10 move, you mentioned it earlier, was it something you were just looking for an opportunity to play, and you instead felt like you had to deal with the top left, and as soon as that was done, you were always planning to come back to that H10? Or was there something else about the situation that said now is the time to try to play in the center?
So this was a move that was on my radar. It looked a little bit weak at first, but especially right after the invasion, I knew this was like the correct time to play it. Another thing to like, this move is really good because it does a lot of things at once. It solidifies that square right there. That's all my points now. I don't, it's really hard to do anything about that now. Not only that, I'm pushing more to the right, which is huge. You mentioned that I was threatening to connect, and then another thing is that I have a lot of potential to harass that bottom, the bottom group. Not only that, I can also take points there, which is important. I'm threatening to both go right and go down, and I'm also threatening to like really prevent them from pushing into my group right here. Yeah, and it's hard to stop the momentum. In fact, losing Sente, like, here's a lesson for Q players. Losing Sente can be a huge deal, like right here. In fact, after Xmo plays the Sente losing move to try and keep the corner, I'm up by, it says about 80%. It's 80 to 20. Now, apparently there's a more accurate move, but my move still keeps the advantage about 60 to 40, which is good enough.
Right.
It is good enough. That means I have enough points. That's all that really matters.
So from here, I guess what I'm so to me this is interesting. I understand or as I see it, Xmo is trying to make sure with this move, trying to do two things. Obviously, one is trying to keep this group from getting themselves locked in. Also, trying to work their way up. Trying to get up into the center here, prevent you from simply establishing it uncontested. I'm curious though, or a thought I have is that in a move like this, it encourages you to simply strengthen. I don't know if you got more aggressive, understandably.
Move is too loose, in my opinion. If they wanted to do that, they needed to already have done the one space jump. Then I probably would have just pushed right. It makes more sense. But here, I'm saying this is too loose.
And you can
I have the
punish.
first move, so I'll be able to cut this off, and then we'll have a fight, and then I might be able to connect my stones again, which would be huge for me. So I feel strategically this is a big mistake because it allows me to cut off and fight over territory that isn't mine.
Right, and because of that, one of the things I'm wondering is looking at alternatives. I feel like at the moment that space is more open. I wonder about approaching here with the intent to potentially, like, as opposed to directly trying to bounce off this stone and push up into your stones in and encourage you to strengthen. I wondered about coming from the left hand side to try to utilize the fact that there is still some space here and that this space is kind of open. I don't know. What else were you looking at in terms of when you put down the H10 play? Where were you thinking? Where were you thinking Xmo might play? And were there any parts of your current layout here that you're particularly concerned about in the center that are vulnerable, that you see as vulnerable, or need to watch for?
So I agree with you. That seems your plan to push against my momentum seems to be very like natural. Um, that group that Xmo has isn't in threat of dying. There's too much space in there. They also can still potentially try and invade me somewhere else to try and connect up. My stones are too loose to really harass them right now, and if you push against my momentum, it's going to be really hard for me to figure out my game plan. Should I try and block and hope that I get Sinte in order to connect my center to my some of my invasion stones to try like because if I can connect to my invasion stones, I can still reduce on the other side too.
Hmm.
There's still a lot of open space on Black's end, on the bottom right. So because of that, it just makes it very unclear what my plan should be. So I admittedly didn't really think about it. This is one of those moves where you just have to. There's too many good options for Black to try and think of in order to really say what's the best move, for in my opinion.
Yep, completely fair. But Black does what I like about this isn't, and again, I think like what Xmo is trying to do makes sense, but as you point out, because of the particular way in which it's set up with that knight's move at G7 beforehand, you spot a way in which you can try to get you can get aggressive and you can try to begin to poke holes at the space in between here. And if we go a couple moves ahead here, so at this point, how do you feel about the way in which things are playing out, and what do you think about the invasion stones originally? Now, at this stage of the game.
There's a fight. They're gonna be great. Random stones scattered everywhere is awesome for fights because it makes it a lot easier to have random threats. Um, I was probably inefficient with the move I did here. I really wanted to have more outwards influence to kind of prevent them from coming in,
Hmm.
right? It was probably just a little too inefficient at netting the other stones. And as you can see, I think the computer says it goes back and forth during the fight, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I end up making a pretty funny shape afterwards. So if you go a few moves in the future, I make two random empty triangles in the middle, but I think it's important to read out why it was necessary. Um, so it's impossible for black to try and kill these two groups. So, like for example, after I fill in the empty triangle,
Hmm.
um, let's say black cuts, right? Black cuts at what, L8,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, wait.
I can Atari the stone, and black should save it, right? And now I can attach, and I can get these stones out because I have one, two, three, four, five liberties to black's two. And those stones are netted. Those aren't going to die. And I'm also threatening to connect to my bottom group. So I'm threatening a lot of reduction here. Um, Especially since how there's still a lot of space to go wreak havoc in black's area as well. And any attacks on my other group will just solidify my points. So it's cutting isn't an option here.
Right.
Um, let's say they try a little more direct. They just try to Atari from the bottom side.
Oh, just come up.
I'll
Hmm.
yeah, I'll just connect, and then I'm threatening to Atari again. I'm threatening a bunch of Aji here. Um, it's probably natural to connect, but let's say they want to solidify, so they'd probably play somewhere big here rather than really deal with that.
Okay.
Um, that's what I would play. I would ignore the situation because I'm losing this fight. It's more important to take bigger space and just hope that you can hold on to it.
Mm, fair. You also have
um,
you do have some options here, depending on if white
yeah.
comes back to it.
Because, yeah, if you just connect here, like, let's say we connect. I'm probably going to play somewhere on, like, the NO, somewhere in the mid teens. So somewhere in that squarish area. Yeah, right there. And that's hard to deal with. Like, I have a big wall that's also supporting it. I'm pretty sure it's just flat out more points for white if you do this.
Hmm.
Um, so I can. This is what I meant by those stones are pretty good Aji later on. It's just these, even though the invasion wasn't good, didn't go how I planned. I found a way to start fighting in a way that was good for me.
Right.
Um, and this eventually led up to me being unsure about the position because I don't remember what black does. Yeah, black does what I say. Just ignore the situation and go play somewhere big. Um, and then they get really aggressive because they think they're losing.
Right. And they start to Xmo looks to try to take that O17 stone, I think to try and take the top right corner,
Yeah,
and you get into
this
another
just
fight.
yeah. Well, it's not really. It's a little bit of a fight. It's a little more. It's not as much contact fighting here.
That's fair.
Um, so it's. I would say it's important to note that this area is 100% win or lose for black. If black can hold on to this, if black can't hold on to this, they have no shot of winning. So black does have to hold on to this stone formation. I miscounted, and apparently I had enough points to where if I just played peacefully and was able to play like a computer for the rest of the game, I could have scraped away with a win.
Hmm.
I didn't count that though. I thought I was losing by a little bit. And because of that, I got pretty aggressive in my next few moves. And I'm setting something up here uh, with my next few moves.
With
After
that,
they connect, I
Mhm.
realize,
I was gonna say
this.
before we go into the before we go into the follow up, I wanted to make one small comment about the N16 play. I think it can seem natural to go ahead and solidify here to just connect everything, but I wonder in so doing it slows you down, which we'll talk about in a second, and I think it kind of comes back to a point you really made about your M3 stone and about the way in which you handled what happened afterwards, which is what is the purpose of the N17 stone? What is the purpose of your N15 stone up here? What is it that you're trying to accomplish in this area? And and by solidifying this group of now three stones and understanding that white is about to move, do you think that you're able to accomplish what you're going for? I'm wondering if instead of this of solidifying and connecting here, it might have made more sense to try to continue to push, potentially sacking that stone, utilizing instead the fact that you have the Q16 stone in play and trying to keep more pressure on this space and try to see if you can't gain some points here and not allow white the opportunity to potentially try to continue to push inwards. Because it makes
So
sense that you would want to keep that intuitively you would want to keep that N17 stone alive, but I'm not sure that it ends up.
being worth it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree that's a little more pressing to play big here. That stone's pretty loosely connected now, especially since you attached to my stone and I Hanade. So it might not be worth saving. But
But Xmo does, and
Xmo
then
saves it and he commits saying this is enough points to win. And or I will be able to quell whatever you're going to push in. I think I agree with you that it's more pressing to play where I was going to play next, or even maybe a two space jump from that. But the issue is that I still have that triangle group that can push in a lot.
true.
And not only that, there's still invasion threats on the top. I have threats, I think, of just straight up attaching to the 4/4 stone with a 3/4 point. I think that is something you can do here. I
With
think having a
Q17.
buddies friend. Yeah, I think it's co for life though, which I don't know how that would go on this board. This board looks a little too solid for both of us, but
Right,
maybe I could throw it in the corner. That's
right.
possible.
It's at least a concern that black needs to
Yeah.
be careful about. But okay, so in the game, it's a good point. There are some other threats here that in looking to expand, if black were looking to expand, white does still have a number of opportunities here to sort of destabilize this group. So Xmo does go ahead and connect, and then as you were getting ready to talk about, you go ahead and you play at N13.
Yeah, just cap it. Try to isolate it. That's what this move is really doing. It doesn't look like it. It looks like black can get away, but I have, with how Xmo responded, which makes sense. You're trying to prevent me from getting a lot of potential, right?
Right.
Uh, but you leave an issue, and we'll see the issue.
So we have Xmo, I think, as you're saying, trying to keep as many points in the space as they can, and you just do a simple extension. I wonder if I think that again I understand the desire to halt your momentum when possible, but it feels like Hane in here may have been a little bit weak. It feels like it opens up. I mean, it certainly opens up a cutting point, but it isn't really doing much to stop what is already a pretty heavy concentration of white stones there. So I don't know how much momentum it really ended up slowing down, especially when you can do, when you still have other avenues here to push.
Yeah,
But
and then
this,
they leave a lot of weaknesses here that at first this was my main game plan. I think at this point with how they responded, I was looking at cuts, but I got a little devilish here. Um,
that you did.
and then this move
Yes,
threatens to invade, just directly invade. So natural black response is to block here, and they do.
they
And then
do.
I do this.
Yes. I was wondering, this is a small sequencing thing. I was wondering if you had considered first playing at Q18 to try to push a little bit more before trying to cut through and or before trying to connect back, or if you felt like it was most important just to go straight for that P15 play.
I think for the most part this was sequencing issues. Even if I still get Sente after this, that's the thing. With how they played it out, I
Fair.
got Sente, so it was useful. The issue is there was a simpler variation to this, and in this variation, I have too many cuts. My N18 stone is a little too weak right now, and I can't. If I try to defend it, I'll lose liberties and then lose the race to capture the stick of stones. I think looking back, there's they blocked. I think I could have flat out at what move 61. I think I could have just rather than do this poke, I could have just flat out extended down or descended at O near O.
Oh, oh, oh.
Yeah, right here to try and capture the stones.
Just a
And
simple
then
a simple extension here at
yeah, that would have
A16.
been way stronger. Way stronger because it's simpler and there's no way for black to get out.
Right.
And I overlooked this. And I think that was crucial. And I gave black winning chances here, but
But
I
you
got
were
I got I got I got a little lucky.
I was going to say, I
We
mean,
take him.
you were still able to, and the way Xmo responded, you were able to capitalize off of that and get this connection, and then
So this was the so I'd like to
yeah,
point out that that was the wrong response. They tried to ladder me.
yep,
Other than the fact that the ladder just doesn't work because I have the end stone, I think they were afraid of me connecting back. So instead of laddering me, I felt it was stronger for them to solidify their corner because I am threatening to go into the corner, right?
right,
So it makes more sense after they try and cut me. I extend and then they block from the right rather than the ladder that
right,
they tried to do because
right.
that forces me to capture. So what's the sequence? I'm gonna play it out on my board.
Hmm.
Extend, capture, Ashikatari, and then they cut me from the right. I tried to do this. It's close. Okay, in the variation I played out, I barely win it, which is I think the one I calculated.
Hmm.
But it's close. There's I think out here rather than cut. The computer says rather than cutting on the outside or the inside, you should cut on the outside, which I agree with because I'm threatening to connect now, and then you can also threaten to Atari after it. So the sequence goes after I connect here.
After you connect with
So, yeah, because
P14,
I have if I want to kill it, I have to do this. Otherwise, they're able to Atari my stone.
right,
So right here, they cut on the outside at M18, right?
hmm,
If I try to disconnect that with M17,
oh, yep,
um, they get to Atari me at N19 or other side. Yeah, both are good, and
both are
I'm
good,
dead.
right,
Yeah, and then I lose the game. Um, and that's the move I overlooked. I only looked at the inside cut. Uh,
Right.
and because of that, with how they dealt with this, I was able to win the wall. Now, I was pretty. The game became pretty close after this.
Right.
Uh,
It just also, if you were to connect, then black can connect, and it's a difference in liberties that still gives black the advantage. I think is the
yeah,
other alternative. Right. So the outside cut was overlooked. Instead, Exmo goes for the inside cut, and you are able to live, plus the ladder that doesn't end up working. And now you're also, I think, again, this ends up working out really nicely for you because you're also in the corner now. You're also
yeah. I'm
deeply in
also
the corner.
threatening to make life in the corner, as you'll see. X-Men tries to take a big move here. I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
they try to get really aggressive, try to make as many points as they can. I think that's a bad move. This is too close. Yeah, you just detach, and that's too
Right.
close.
I think one of the things is like I'm curious about, putting on pressure makes sense. I wonder about trying to make something happen in the corner first rather than strengthen your ability here to strengthen the stones along the left hand side. It feels like, as you just said, you just
I
Hane.
think, unfortunately, here the game is just decided because I was able to get the stick. Um, it's too big of a space for me now, especially with too much pressure. I'm going to get something somewhere, and it's eventually I'm just going to be able to eke out a win here. Um, that stick was very valuable to black, and they put 4 stones into it, and that was a lot of points they were potentially getting that I now have.
It was real nice in the way that ended up playing out for you. And even though, as you mentioned, there were a couple ways in which Xmo could have been, still sealed that. Once that was decided, you're absolutely right. That now you've got this the formation for me of the wall of ruler that is underway. That just there are it feels like there are very few opportunities, particularly in this upper area, for black to be able to find any way in. You've got such a concentration of stones in the center here that black doesn't seem to have enough strength to really push in, and there's certainly it seems doubtful there's enough space. I've been trying to read, but I don't see anywhere that black could play within your upper center area that they might be able to make life. Obviously, um, you know, there's
I feel,
the play here,
yeah.
but that isn't there's no presence anywhere in this area for black to really be able to make use of it. So you're in a winning position. You're in a great position here, and it
I
makes
just have to
sense.
convert.
It makes sense. Exmo is trying to get really aggressive. I guess the thing too, though, is that Exmo is trying to get aggressive because it looks like they recognize that, but they are just they aren't. It doesn't seem like they're able to really punch through your territory and make any real headway so much as they can reduce a little bit your potential, but it doesn't seem like it's enough. Especially, for example, I think your response here with E3 to just seal off the corner I thought was great. Just not only are you solidifying this corner for yourself, you're putting that pressure on this and trying to condense down these group of stones that are now under a lot, more and more pressure. And I thought
I
that was
think
a nice move.
another thing's important. They still owe me a move in the top, right? And they didn't give it to me.
Right.
So I threatened to do a bunch of nasty things to their territory now. They have to block. Otherwise, I get to like monkey jump, and that doesn't. That's just like 7 points for free. And then they have to block, and they still owe me moves. And then now I have Sente.
Yep. The way in which you were able to hold on to Sente through this game, I thought was very impressive, and you did a nice job. For example, here the reductions I think ended up working well, and like you said, you still have Sente, and you're still setting the pace. You're constantly forcing. You have all of this in some ways. You still have a lot of space to work with, but you're constantly forcing Exmo. You're constantly forcing Black to answer you, and as soon as Black answers, you're moving on, and in every move that you do it, you are making it harder and harder for black to find any space to sort of push back territory into the center. Um, so we
New
have this
lesson
play
for the
out.
day. Take your free moves. Take your free stuff. It's nice.
One thing I was curious about your play at e5 here on move 96. Were you not too worried about this space here on the ninth and eighth line?
Yeah,
Um,
not at all. No. I think I read it out and I was able to pin it in and I was still ahead, right? And then I think yeah.
so
I think
then
they go push in and then I just can net it, right?
right. So now
Yeah.
it's not a concern at all. Or, yep.
Yeah, and then this is just on my points.
Right. And I think the way in which this game ends up, um, it's just such a. It is a wall, and the way in which if we take a second and this is the end state of the game, where you've got so much of the board, but ruler still has that bottom right, some of the bottom center, and some of the bottom some of the center right. If we compare it to the way it started, I think is really striking to me. It
I
starts
think it's
out,
funny that I managed to get to the top right corner at all.
yeah, I mean, like, look at, this is where we are, this is where the game begins, in this very even space, and even a couple moves in, we have a little bit of this play in the center, but to go from here to the way in which we just talked about, yeah, you were able to carve out the top right, and you managed to just take so much of the center. Even I think the way in which you were able to do that was really worked out really well, and the pressure you were able to hold. So it made
I
it difficult
think
for Xmo.
yeah, I think Xmo played really well. I think he just really like I made a bad order, bad sequencing in the top right. Uh it was really close at the top right. Like that was a major area of contention.
Hmm.
That was the last big area to play in. I sequenced poorly, and unfortunately, Xmo just wasn't able to spot the proper response.
Right.
And because of it, I was able to just get lucky with my greed and
Paid
win the
off.
game because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you're absolutely right. Just beyond the state of the game, or beyond the winner and the loser of this game, the changes in Xmo's play were really impressive to see. The beginning of it seems like your coaching paid off, but even beyond the beginning, I mean, the fact that Xmo was jumping into the top corner, I feel like was something that I haven't seen a lot of players in the round one do, to be that kind of aggressive, to allow themselves to move and start somewhere new after the game has started. I loved seeing that. The sequencing was off, and there's some changes that Exmo could make to make that stronger. But just the fact that that was happening, the fact that Exmo, when the top right ended up playing out the way it did, I think you could argue that it was probably worth it to consider locking that down a little bit more before jumping. But the fact that Exmo looked at that and made the decision that to go ahead and Tanuki, to look to play somewhere else, I think is also just a mindset that can be hard for newer players. So it was really cool to see Exmo trying to take back the initiative, trying to find a way to take back the initiative. And it didn't necessarily pay out in this instance, but that was really, I think, a great change as well.
Yeah,
It
I
was a
think it
cool
was.
game.
I agree. It was the right mindset. I think specifically in this position, uh, you're just a little too far from your stones to be really connecting or attaching like that. Maybe somewhere a little higher because I'm going to have to defend two sides, right? So if you just play off the little triangle wall you have,
Right.
it's a little scarier. I would say.
Right. I think it's also the mindset too. From what I'm reading, it seems like the E6 play here has a mind to put on some pressure, but also to really try and get something more solidified here. But it doesn't feel like it ends up really doing a lot to accomplish either because of the how crunched in everything is. Whereas as you're talking about, another possibility is to really be much more aggressive, much more forward in trying to reduce, and then potentially after sort of pushing you further back to utilize stones that you build here to be able to more safely pull back and get something more out of it would be sort of another way to approach trying to make something happen, trying to get back some of that momentum that was lost in the top right.
Yeah. I think if you go back to like move 47, this was a really really nice move by Xmo. This was the
Yeah.
move of am I on the right? Yeah, I'm on 47.
With the
Uh
N15 play, the jump in there.
yeah. Oh, maybe my Discord's just delayed or something.
Oh, might be.
Huh.
Yeah, might be that for some reason
It's
my screen share's a
It
little
might
off.
have froze. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, I trust you're on the right thing. Yeah, that jump in is the move I wanted to do. And I think this was a okay, it's fixed now. Um the jump in is really nice by Xmo. It looks a little too far, but it's not.
Yeah,
It's good distance. You're threatening a lot of points. You're threatening to push in. It's doing a lot of things for them. And I think intuitively, if this is on their mind for push like how they should push in, this is a great move. This is great spacing.
yeah. I think if this becomes if this sort of carries on in future games, I think Xmo has a lot of potential strength, and being able to capitalize on this, being able to see this, is is a great sign. Did you have any other thoughts about the game? Any other things you wanted to point out or highlight before we wrap up?
Um, Not really, other than remember, folks, remember your 3/3 invasion Josekis. Uh, Otherwise you can end up giving Sente away like Xmo did, and then the game becomes very unclear.
Yep, yep. I think that's a great one. Knowing your Josekis can save you an enormous amount of time. If you ever can't remember your Joseki, if you can't remember, the proper sequencing, the proper variation that's been established, then as long as time allows, if you're ever not sure, giving yourself, I mean, you have, within these games, these are set for 45 minutes a player. Time itself is a resource. If you need to, do your best to read it out for things like that, because is Ruler points out, seeding Sente like that can really have, and did have, big ramifications for the ways in which the board progressed from there on. And so taking that time, if you need it, to read out variations can potentially save you. Knowing your Joseki can save you even more time, and can help you with better time management. But when you forget them, still use the time you have to do the reading to make sure that you're trying to keep Sente and keep the pressure on as much as you can.
Yeah, don't forget about Byo-Yomi either. You're not dead after your time runs out in this.
Yes.
Unlike the other games we play.
Yes. It's a really, really good point. The Byomi periods of 5 periods of 30 seconds each are also another resource. If you end the game and you've lost and you have 30 minutes of time left, or you have 5 Byomi periods left, that's extra time that you could have used to think a little bit more, to reconsider something. It's absolutely there. That time is there, including those Byomi periods, is a really great point. All there to give you the time to be able to make the best move possible. Still, this game I think was really great, and it was really, really cool to see back to back the ways in which Xmo really changed up their style, and what that did for them. They were able to make a lot of things happen, to make a lot of inroads, I think, that were very cool to see.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that wraps up our analysis of the game. I obviously want to mention, if you're a fan of chess, Wargroove, turn-based games in general, the Groove of War channel that is hosting and sponsoring this Take Your Turn tournament. The Groove of War channel has a ton of Wargroove and chess replays from the tournament. Obviously, a ton of incredible Wargroove content in general, and I highly recommend you check it out. Thank you, Ruler, for your commentary, for your insight into the ways in which you ended up playing out this game, your thought process. It was really, really great to be able to sit down and get a first-hand account of how the board was playing out. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and then, of course, thank everyone for watching.